The Prstly Prgtv. This is the story of a man who did not appreciate his wife, also of a woman who did him too great an honor when she gave herself to him. Incidentally, it concerns a Jesuit priest who had never been known to lie. He was an appurtenance, and a very necessary one, to the Yukon country, but the presence of the other two was merely accidental. They were specimens of the many strange waifs which ride the breast of a gold rush, or come tailing along behind. Edwin Bentham and Grace Bentham were waifs. They were also trailing along behind, for the Klondike rush of '97 had long since swept down the great river and subsided into the famine-stricken city of Dawson. When the Yukon shut up shop and went to sleep under a 3-foot ice sheet, this peripatetic couple found themselves at the Five-Finger Rapids, with the city of gold still a journey of many sleeps to the north. Many cattle had been butchered at this place in the fall of the year, and the offal made a goodly heap. The three fellow voyagers of Edwin Bentham and wife gazed upon this deposit, did a little mental arithmetic, caught a certain glimpse of a bonanza, and decided to remain. And all winter they sold sacks of bones and frozen hides to the famished dog teams. It was a modest price, they asked, $1 a pound, just as it came. 6 months later, when the sun came back and the Yukon awoke, they buckled on their heavy money belts and journeyed back to the Southlands, where they yet live and lie mightily about the Klondike they never saw. But Edwin Bentham, he was an indolent fellow, and had not been possessed of a wife, and had he not been possessed of a wife, would have gladly joined issue in the dog-meat speculation. As it was, she played upon his vanity, told him how great and strong he was, how a man such as he certainly could overcome all obstacles, and of a surety obtain the golden fleece. So he squared his jaw, sold his share in the bones and hides for a sled and one dog, and turned his snowshoes to the north. Needless to state, Grace Bentham's snowshoes never allowed his tracks to grow cold. Nay, ere their tribulations had seen 3 days, it was the man who followed in the rear and the woman who broke trail in advance. Of course, if anyone hove into sight, the position was instantly reversed. Thus did his manhood remain virgin to the travelers who passed like ghosts on the silent trail. There are such men in this world. How such a man and such a woman came to take each other for better and for worse is unimportant to this narrative. These things are familiar to us all, and those people who do them, or even question them too closely, are apt to lose a beautiful faith which is known as eternal fitness. Edwin Bentham was a boy, thrust by mischance into a man's body, a boy who could complacently pluck a butterfly wing from wing, or cower in abject terror before a lean, nervy fellow, not half his size. He was a selfish crybaby, hidden behind a man's mustache and stature, and glossed over with a skin-deep veneer of culture and conventionality. Yes, he was a clubman and a society man, the sort that grace the social functions and utter inanities with a charm and unction which is indescribable, the sort that talk big and cry over a toothache, the sort that put more hell into a woman's life by marrying her than can the most graceless libertine that ever browsed in forbidden pastures. We meet these men every day, but we rarely know them for what they are. Second to marrying them, the best way to get this knowledge is to eat out of the same pot and crawl under the same blanket with them for, well, say a week. No greater margin is necessary. To see Grace Bentham was to see a slender, girlish creature. To know her was to know a soul which dwarfed your own, yet retained all the elements of the eternal feminine. This was the woman who urged and encouraged her husband in his Northland quest, who broke trail for him when no one was looking, and cried in secret over her weakling woman's body. So journeyed this strangely assorted couple down to old Fort Selkirk, then through 50 miles of dismal wilderness to Stewart River. And when this short day left them, and the man lay down in the snow and blubbered, it was the woman who lashed him to the sled, bit her lip with the pain of her aching limbs, and helped the dogs haul him to Malamute Kid's cabin. Malamute Kid was not at home, but Myers, the German trader, cooked great moose steaks and shook up a bed of fresh pine boughs. Lake, Langham, and Parker were excited, and not unduly so, when the cause was taken into account. "Oh, Sandy, say, can you tell a porterhouse from around? Come out and lend us a hand anyways." This appeal emanated from the cache, where Langham was vainly struggling with divers quarters of frozen moose. "Don't you budge from those dishes," commanded Parker. "I say, Sandy, there's a good fellow. Just run down to the Missouri camp and borrow some cinnamon," begged Lake. Oh, hurry up. Why don't... But the crash of meat and boxes in the cache abruptly quenched this presumptuous summons. "Come now, Sandy, it won't take a minute to go down to the Missouri." "You leave him alone," interrupted Parker. "How am I to mix the biscuits if the table isn't cleared off?" Sandy paused in indecision, till suddenly the fact that he was Langham's man dawned upon him. Then he apologetically threw down the greasy dishcloth and went to his master's rescue. These promising scions of wealth progenitors had come to the Northland in search of laurels, with much money to burn and a man apiece. Luckily for their souls, when other two men were up the White River in search of mythical quartz ledge, so Sandy had to grin under the responsibilities of 3 healthy masters, each of whom was possessed of peculiar cookery ideas. Twice that morning had a disruption of the whole camp been imminent, only averted by the immense concessions from one or the other of these knights of the chafing dish. But at last their mutual creation, a real dainty dinner, was completed. Then they sat down to a 3-cornered game of cutthroat, a proceeding which did away with all cause belli for future hostilities, and permitted the victor to depart on a most important mission. This fortune fell to Parker, who parted his hair in the middle, put on his mittens and bearskin cap, and stepped over to Malamute Kid's cabin. And when he returned, it was in the company of Grace Bentham and the Malamute Kid. The former was very sorry her husband could not share with her their hospitality, for he'd gone up to look at the Henderson Creek mines, and the latter was still a trifle stiff from breaking trail down the Stewart River. Myers had been asked, but had declined, being deeply engrossed in an experiment of raising bread from hops. Well, they could do without the husband, but a woman, why, they had not seen one all winter, and the presence of this one promised a new era in their lives. They were college men and gentlemen, these 3 young fellows, yearning for the flesh pots that had been so long denied. Probably Grace Bentham suffered from a similar hunger. At least, it meant much to her, the first bright hour in many weeks of darkness. But